Welcome to the Georgia Lacrosse Officials Association presentation on the game and rules of lacrosse. We'll be using NFHS Boys Lacrosse rules for the 2025 spring season. And again, my name is Greg Height. I'm the lead trainer. I am a USA Lacrosse certified clinician and work with them on their education programs. Uh, we're going to be going through about 20 presentations that will be available on galaxref.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel for the Georgia Lacrosse Officials Association. All of these will be posted up there, and you can refer back to these as you work your way through your first season, second season, third season, and you can use them as a resource to go back because we are about to throw a lot of information at you. I understand that this is really challenging, and so we wanted a way that you could refer back to some of these things. So as you grew as an official and as you started to understand some things, you could begin to hone your skills and work on others. So let me give you an idea of the landscape of what is happening here in Georgia. Uh, Georgia Lacrosse Officials Association is the only lacrosse officials association in the state right now. We cover everything. Most of that is in the metro Atlanta area, but we have sort of groups in Augusta, and we've got groups in Savannah. We've got programs coming up all the time. We at GLOA have about 180 members, and you can find out more about us at galaxref.com. That website is full of all sorts of resources that you can use. And if you have questions or need to get in touch with somebody, that's a great place to go. Georgia High Schools Association has 120 varsity lacrosse programs. Um, if you are going to work high school games, you have to register with GHSA as an official. You get a background check. But that does provide insurance for you when you are working GHSA games. But it only gives you insurance for working Georgia high school games. Um, the GLOA does not provide its members with insurance, so these are things to consider as you're getting into this. Um, there's another group, the GIAA. This is the athletic wing of the Georgia Independent Schools Association. They have 4 varsity programs right now that may or may not grow in the coming years. And we provide officials for those guys as well. There are literally hundreds of youth games, U9 through high school, uh, in the fall and in the spring. In the summer, it's mostly tournaments, but there are tournaments in the fall and really throughout the year, and we assign, I'd say, 90% of those. Um, the other two big players that you need to be aware of is the National Federation of High Schools, the NFHS. These are the guys that write the rule books. We are an NFHS state, so when you register with GHSA, you get access to the online rulebook through um, what we call the Dragonfly application and through NFHS All Access. All that information is on the website, and if you have questions, you can just reach out to me. USA Lacrosse is the governing body of lacrosse in the United States. They provide wonderful educational opportunities, webinars, rules interpretation videos, lots of great stuff. Um, they also provide insurance for both high school and non-GHSA games. So if you are working a game that is not through GHSA, or if you are working a game that is covered by GHSA, USA Lacrosse provides you insurance for every time you step onto a lacrosse field. There are other options, but I think it's really important that you are aware of that. If you are not a member of USA Lacrosse and you are doing a youth game, you are working on your own insurance. All right, so I think it's really important that you know the history of the game and you know about some of the challenges that we face as we try to grow this game. Um, some of the amazing parts about the history of lacrosse and some of the sort of nastier sides of the history of lacrosse. This is a great, great video, and I will let you listen.
How does the outside world view lacrosse? It's exclusive. It's expensive.
It wasn't always that way.
It's white.
It's not all white.
It's the boys' club.
Lacrosse is a sport for everyone.
Let me tell you our story, the story of the Haudenosaunee. That is our traditional name. Today, most people know us as the Iroquois. Lacrosse is the oldest team sport on our continent. The Haudenosaunee people were first given this game over 1,000 years ago as a gift from the Creator. It was given to us as a medicine game. A ceremonial game was called to heal the sick, make peace among nations, and to have fun. We had no referees. It was a ceremony game played with the wooden stick made from the hickory tree, representing all plant life. The net was made from the sinew of the deer, representing all animals. The wooden stick represented our connection to the natural world. This game connects us to the earth. A stick is put in our cradle board when we are born, and we are buried with our stick when we die. We will carry our stick into the next world to play with our ancestors who are waiting for us. When we play competitive lacrosse, we carry the values of the medicine game onto the field and into the box. We are the originators of this game. It is our way of life for our people. It is a great honor to be a lacrosse player. Many First Nations have many different names for the game. In Onondaga, we call it the Hunkachikwaiks, which means they bump hips. The name lacrosse came from across the waters. In the 1630s, the French missionaries coined the name lacrosse because they thought the stick looked like a crozier or cross the bishops carried. They also changed the Haudenosaunee name to the Iroquois, and the game began to take a new shape. First played outside the native reservations in Montreal, Canada. 200 years later, Canada actually declared lacrosse as its national sport, and in doing so, they distanced lacrosse from its native roots and intentions. It's like saying, for this to be ours, it's no longer yours. In our view, the game was a gift from our people to share with the world. To quote the great Oren Lyons, former All-American goalkeeper at Syracuse, Lacrosse Hall of Famer, Onondaga faith keeper, and global speaker, when you talk about lacrosse, you talk about the lifeblood of our Six Nations: the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora nations. The game is ingrained in our culture, our system, and our lives. Anthropologists come here and stay for a year and think they understand our life and our religion. If you can't understand the language, you'll never get it right. I've been here my whole life and I'm still learning. But when I die, I know I will be buried with my goalkeeper stick.
College lacrosse was born when Manhattan College and NYU played the first game in 1877, 22 years before the first ever college basketball game tip-off. Racial segregation in the United States made the inclusion of Black, Indigenous, and people of color almost non-existent in collegiate sports through the early 1900s and Jim Crow era. But the civil rights movement did bring change to the sports world. Texas Western won a national championship in basketball with an all-black starting lineup in 1966. The following year, Kentucky's Nate Northington became the first black football player in the SEC. And lacrosse had Jim Brown. Yes, that Jim Brown. In his memoir, legendary sports writer and Emmy Award-winning writer Dick Schaap recounts his days facing Brown while Schaap played goalie for Cornell. In the big game against Syracuse, I made 22 saves, 3 off Jim Brown. I never saw those 3 shots. They bounced off me. Brown took 4 other shots and scored 4 goals. Jim Brown was the best lacrosse player who ever lived. He played midfield, wielding a stick so short it bordered on illegal, and protecting that stick so fiercely with his forearm that double and even triple teams did not slow him down. His legs brought to mind telephone poles, but telephone poles never moved so swiftly. That was in 1957. 63 years later, Brown remains the only black male player in the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Like other collegiate sports, lacrosse slowly became more diverse in the 1960s. And that brings us to Morgan State College. Dr. Miles Harrison Jr., my father, was an attackman on the 10 Bears. Though I fear the 10 Bears of Morgan State College have become part of lacrosse's forgotten lore, Morgan State was the first historically black college to field an NCAA lacrosse team. And until recently, they were the only historically black college or university in men's lacrosse. From 1970 to 1975, the 10 Bears were a perennial top 25 team. Morgan State beat Harvard, Notre Dame, and upset the number one team in the country at the time, Washington and Lee University. But as the 80s dawned, the Bears went into hibernation. Morgan State shuttered its lacrosse program in 1981 due to financial hardship. The 10 Bears became a distant echo. In the modern age of lacrosse, grow the game has become a popular rallying cry. The sport has seen its geographical footprint expand considerably, from hotbeds in Dallas to Denver, the Bay Area of San Francisco, and the Pacific Northwest. Well-known and established equipment and apparel companies have invested. Though demographic expansion has been slow, the access is limited. It's expensive to play, as are other sports like hockey and golf. Games that require equipment and contact insurance present high barriers for participation. Think about football. Though football, on the other hand, began subsidizing the cost of equipment and insurance at the youth and rec level decades ago, relying on taxpayer dollars to fund participation. And as a result, football enjoyed unrivaled popularity and a wide range of demographic participation. Perhaps growing the game requires us to return to our traditional roots, as well as to think critically about access and funding. While the faces of the game remain largely unchanged, players of color have made their mark in recent years. Damian Davis and John Christmas won national championships at Princeton and Virginia. In 2005, while surrounded by tremendous teammates and coaches at Johns Hopkins University, I was fortunate enough to become the first black player to win the Tewaaraton Award. Most recently, Albany's Lyle Thompson and Miles Thompson smashed Division I records, winning numerous accolades and inspiring a generation, all while proudly championing their Haudenosaunee heritage. Trevor Baptiste turned into the greatest face-off artist the game has ever seen, while Miles Jones inspired Jim Brown comparisons, and in turn inspired others to follow in his footsteps. In 2016, Hampton University launched a Division I men's program. The Pirates became the first HBCU since Morgan State College to field an NCAA men's lacrosse team.
So what's the future for lacrosse?
It is my family's and my people's hope that lacrosse will be welcomed by everyone, that the game will be played with honor. We hope that lacrosse will bring a world community based on true friendship, respect, and peace. We hope that lacrosse and the Iroquois Nationals will be at the Olympics in 2028.
We have to own the past, learn from it, impact the present, and change the future.
We have to speak up, be allies, be advocates, and we need to grow the women's game.
We have to be fearless. We need to stand together to create change, to fight against social injustice, and build a more inclusive community that empowers players.
We have to be a sport that represents the direction of where our world is moving. We have to be the sport of the future.
All right, so long history. Lots of change, lots of growth. If you are a follower of college lacrosse, you know that Notre Dame won the national championship, Denver's won the national championship. The game is growing in leaps and bounds, and Georgia for a long time was really kind of considered uh, a developing place. But I think we are very much at the forefront of a lot of what is happening in the sport in terms of our officiating, in terms of our training, in terms of the players and the coaches that are here now. We've got a lot of kids that are heading out into big time programs. Okay, um, so play of the game. Okay, um, lacrosse is a physical sport. It is a one of my favorite quotes about lacrosse is it is a skill sport that allows contact. Right? It is not a collision sport, but there's a lot going on here. So here's a little clip of uh, some college lacrosse that you can see here. Again, really skilled. Two teams of 10, attackmen, defensemen, and midfielders, must have two legally equipped goalkeepers. Games are usually 4 12-minute quarters. That's the NFHS time slot for each period. Teams switch side at each quarter. That being said, JV games are 10 minutes. You might get 20-minute running times in a youth game. If you watch college is 15-minute quarters. Game begins with a face-off. We'll have a whole separate presentation on that. Players may check with their body and their cross. So think hockey, okay? Ball is in play by being carried, thrown, or batted with the cross or rolled or kicked in any direction. And we've got offside, so no more than 6 offensive players on their end and 7 defensive players on their end of the field. Goals count as 1. Most goals win, right? If you are a basketball official, the guy who invented basketball, James Naismith, was a hockey and lacrosse player from Canada. So if you understand basketball offense and defense and the strategy that goes in there, overloading sides, zones, finding the right matchup, this is all comes straight from lacrosse. All right, penalties. Um, there's procedural signals, technical fouls, and personal fouls. There are two types of fouls in lacrosse. There's personal, or what I like to call safety fouls, and then there's technical fouls, advantage, disadvantage fouls. Technical fouls either award a team possession of the ball, so uh, you can get that option, or depending upon whether the player who is offended has possession of the ball, uh, if that happens, then it's a 30-second time serving penalty. So you are essentially doing what we do in hockey, where you put somebody in the box and the other team plays a man down for a certain amount of time, in this case 30 seconds. Personal fouls are always time serving, and they last either 1, 2, or 3 minutes. It's never going to be 1 minute and 15 seconds or 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's always going to be a 1 minute foul, a 2 minute foul, and a 3 minute foul. Those can be releasable. That means if the offended team scores a goal, you are now free to come back into the game as a substitute, or they are non-releasable, in which case, even if the team that was offended scores a goal, you have to remain in the box until that penalty time has expired. Examples: slashing, tripping, cross check, illegal body check, unnecessary roughness. These are examples of personal fouls. Technical fouls, again, advantage, disadvantage, holding, pushing, interference, offsides, right? Illegal substitution, those sort of things. This is the NFHS rulebook for 2025, and the rulebook is divided into 7 rules: the game, field, and equipment, game personnel, time factors, play of the game, personal and ejection fouls, technical fouls, and penalty enforcement. The place you really want to spend most of your time is going to be Rule 4 5, and 6. Game field and equipment, personnel, time factors really won't take you that long to get through. It's a lot of information that the more you do this, you will remember what a legal cross dimension is, or how long the field should be, or where the table should be placed, or any of that stuff, right? So don't skip these rules. You want to go through them, but they're pretty black and white, right? Play of the game is where things can get a little more complicated, right? For those of you who have played the game, you're going to understand flow and you're going to understand sort of what things are like. What's going to be difficult for you is to start seeing the game as an official and not seeing the game as a player. Offensive players, defensive players, goalies, you guys all have your own little ideas about, how the game should be played. But the important thing here is, as officials, we don't write the rule book. This rule book is written by a committee of administrators and coaches from all across the country. There is an official on the committee, but they do not get a vote. So when we get the rule changes, this is not us deciding how we want to call the game. This is this national body deciding how we're supposed to call this game. For those of you who are not lacrosse players, if you've officiated in another sport, you bring a really important skill set to bear. You know how to read a rule book. You know how to talk to coaches. You know how to signal. So coming at this experience of being a new official is going to be different for both groups of people, and you're all going to have challenges and you're all going to have some advantages. Personal ejection fouls and technical fouls, this is what do we do when somebody cheats or does something dangerous, or when we essentially need to step in and begin to respond to what is happening in the game. And so you can spend a lot of time here. This is a thing where you really need to know the rule book, but you've also got to start having conversations with people who are more experienced and have worked more games than you do, so you can start to get your calibration right as to what should be a foul and what should you let go. And we will do an entire presentation on that as well. Rule 7, penalty enforcement. That's going to be tough for you at the beginning. Penalty enforcement is usually going to be handled by a more senior official on the crew with you. Folks who have more experience, who have handled this, who know how to report things. This is after the penalty and the kid goes in the box. Where does the ball start? How long is he in for? What can happen? What can't happen? How can we fix things? How can we address issues? So this is a much more complicated rule that you're going to want to spend some time playing around with. Okay. Now, youth rules are modifications to high school rule books, so it's essential that you do go through the entire boys' high school rule book, even if you are only planning on officiating youth games. You need to know the high school rule book so that you can understand what the modifications are. So, there's a couple places that I would really love you to bookmark, okay? Points of emphasis. Points of emphasis are the usually 4 things that the rules committee says is of great concern to them that they want us to be aware of. Okay, points of emphasis is really them sort of saying to the officiating community, we're worried about this and you need to step in and fix this. Rules changes are going to be sort of bolded and grayed out in your rule book, so you will always know when that's a new thing. And at the beginning of your book, there is a list of all of the rules changes. You can also check out galaxref.com. I will often, every year I post something to the website that talks about rules changes, and then as memos and modifications and editorial stuff comes out, I update that post. So GLaxRef, again, is a great place to check it out. Goals scored or not counted, Rule 489. Probably one of the most important rules that you're going to want to pay attention to here. Make sure that you are going through this. Now, that being said, for those of you who are officials, you understand that rule books are often a little wackadoo when it comes to how things are organized. It's not an encyclopedia, so you can't just say, oh, well, Rule 4, 8 through 9 says these are the 10 things that can happen for a goal to count or not be counted. There are other places in the rule book that talk about goals being counted or not counted. So you really have to become intimately familiar with this text, and you should be highlighting and making notes and bookmarking things and dog-earing things and really getting in there so that you understand what is happening in this book. Um, Misapplication of rules, inadvertent whistles and flags, or what I like to call when you as an official screw up, how can you fix it? What are your options? So 419 through 21. Cross specifications are the physical dimensions and depths and measurements and tests that we do to a cross in order to make sure that the stick is legal. All right. Overtime's a good one to know. 432, right? And then signals. Right now, signals are your best friend. If you can teach yourself to look like you know what you're doing, it's really important. And I will say this: if you've officiated before, incredibly helpful. If you are a basketball official, what you signal as a push is a two-handed push. To a lacrosse official, that looks like a cross check. And the difference there is one is a technical foul, possession, or 30 seconds. And in another case, it's a personal 1, 2, or 3 minute foul. If you are a football official, if you're a white hat, you're used to going up there and being on TV and giving the signal and making the announcement. If you're not a white hat, you're used to kind of giving that sort of slightly sloppy, colloquial signal over to your buddy so that he can relay it to the white hat so that the white hat can go talk. So you really have to get in front of the mirror and practice these signals so that everybody knows what is going on, and you really can build your confidence and the confidence that others have in you if you spend time on that. Now, there are a couple of words that are going to pop up in the rule book: must, shall, and will. If you get a must, will, or shall, those aren't options. Those are what you need to do. The home team shall provide balls and goals and a properly lined field, right? The head coach must certify that all players are properly equipped. These are things you have to do. If you see should, may, and can, it's important to note that those are options, right? That is something that a player may do, can do, should do, but it's not necessarily required. So pay attention to those sort of key words as you're reading through the book. Couple of other things that are available. This is the USAL two-man mechanics. The new one has just come out, and you can find that on galaxref.com under the resources tab. And for those of you who are in the class with me this spring, the training plan document that I share with you has a link to the two-man mechanics manual. Great resources for all levels of officials, right? It it talks about game management. It's got great appendices. It's going to tell you where you are supposed to be and what you are supposed to be looking at, and the sort of process that you need to go through as you officiate a game. So the rule books and the mechanics manual go really hand in hand. You can't learn what you're supposed to be looking at and where you're supposed to be in the rule book. You really do need the mechanics manual. Now, we also have a much more fleshed out mechanics manual. Right now, this is in early January, and I am in the process of updating the GLOA game guide. This was originally written in 2014 by Gordon Corsetti, and this is literally everything that's not in the USA Mechanics Manual or much more fleshed out. So this is where you should stand during the national anthem, how you do the coin toss and the lineup, and tips and tricks for if you're the lead official or the trail official, or you are dealing with different types of games, blowout playoff games, rec games, those sort of things. In addition, the GLOA game guide has three-man mechanics in there as well. So as you move up the ranks, we go from two officials on a game, usually a youth game or a JV game, to three officials on the game for a high school game and all college games. And so you're going to start to see different mechanics and different positioning and different responsibilities for officials at higher level games. This is a great place to sort of get introduced to that. Lacrosse terminology. Lacrosse terminology, you've got sort of our who, midfielders, also known as middies, defensemen, you have D or long pole. Um, uh, Midfielders will most often have what we call a short stick, 40 to 42 inches long. Defensemen tend to have a 6-foot long pole, 52 to 72 inches. There are a bunch of defensive midfielders who will have a longer pole. Attackmen, these guys tend to be the guys that hang out by the other team's goal. They're the really good scorers. Midfielders play defense and offense. Defensemen hang out by their own goal. You must have a properly equipped goalkeeper. They're going to have different equipment and a very different looking cross. And then the only really other person that is listed in the rule book in terms of who is the head coach. Now, when we get into what, we're going to talk about offense and defense. And offense is always referred to in the rule book as Team A. So you will see A31 carries the ball across midfield. What they're telling you is Team A is the one playing offense. Okay. Now, Team B, by default, then, is the team playing defense. Okay. So B32 slashes A1. You will see this language in the rule book. In lacrosse, if you are in your defensive end and there is a change of possession, so you get the ball, either the goalie makes a save or a defenseman picks up a ground ball or intercepts a pass, that team is now clearing the ball. They are trying to get the ball from their defensive end into their offensive end. That's what we call that. Okay. If you are the team trying to prevent that defense from clearing the ball, you are called the riding team. And so when you're dealing with clears, this language of A and B can get a little more confusing. So it's important to know sort of what's going on there. Now let's talk about where. And we're going to get into this in our next presentation, but the alley, the box, the midline, substitution or penalty box, the wing, the crease, goal line extended, X. This is an area sort of behind the cage, heading towards the end line. Face-off X, top left, top right, how we explain where the ball is. It's always from the position of the goalie facing upfield. So top right is the top of the box to the right of the goalie, that corner of the box. Side left, side right, same thing. We're doing it from the perspective of the team's goalie. And then you've got a crease, so high-low crease. So if you play hockey, if you've seen basketball, it's similar to the high or low post. The GLOA is involved in a number of memorial funds, and we support those through our members donating game checks, as well as making regular donations. And we have 3 charitable funds that we contribute to. The Ron Maloney Fund enables high school players who best exemplify Ron's spirit. He was one of the founding members of the GLOA back in the 90s. Are able to apply. Their coach sends in a recommendation for players to attend lacrosse summer camp. Most of these kids go to the Georgia Tech summer camp, and they get a full ride, they get full board, they get to go for a week, they get to develop their skills. These are kids who probably wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to do that. And we have sent over 100 kids since this fund was established in 2005, and it's amazing. It's one of my favorite things of being an official is being at the championship game at halftime and being able to give these kids their certificates and take a photo and let them go to lacrosse camp in the summer. The Kevin Moore Fund. Kevin Moore was one of the, again, earlier officials in the state, and he essentially had my job. He was the lead trainer for the GLOA. And this fund provides financial assistance to officials who want to attend professional development. So when we used to have LaxCon, you could get money to sort of offset the costs of going to LaxCon. Right now, we are using this to support our training and observation program to really help grow the game in the state of Georgia. And this is a really helpful fund that allows us to get out there with our observation program and give real-time feedback on a regular basis to officials, because that's how you get better. And then, of course, we have the Gordon Corsetti Mental Agility Foundation. This is run through actually the Gordon Corsetti Mental Agility Foundation. Gordon's father, Lou, is heading this up, and this raises funds for suicide prevention and mental illness research. Gordon was a good friend of mine and one of the really important guys who took the training program here in Georgia and then later at USA Lacrosse and really elevated it to a level that it had not ever been at. More information on this can be found at galaxref.com. If you're interested in making a donation to any of these funds, please contact president at galaxref.com. You can also shoot me an email or a text. But I know a lot of folks outside of Georgia use these presentations, and if any of you could help us out with any of these really wonderful causes, that would be lovely. All right, my name's Greg Height, and again, I'm the lead trainer here at GLOA and a USA Lacrosse clinician. You've got my cell phone and my email address. Feel free to reach out and shoot me a question, or let me know if something's screwed up on a presentation. I would love to hear from you guys, and thanks for joining.